text messaging on the 24th with Miss Xavier Winford. In that text message, it was in fact a romantic message. As a
Okay,
result,
you're getting off into something else. Tell me how the images of Miss Benning are relevant to what you want to prove.
I want to introduce the relevance in regards to Miss Benning's romantic relationship that she too was seeing other.
And you're of the opinion the two images prove that?
They're not in their text message threads, not just the images.
Okay. You just asked me to introduce images.
I meant to say text messages if I didn't say images.
Where are they?
They are here, Your Honor.
All right, get those and we'll mark them B or whatever that other thing under C. Okay, what else you got?
In addition to that, Your Honor, in addition to that, yesterday the state asked Mr. Eric Devlin, who was the digital forensic person for the defense, whether or not, or at least represented that Jerry's Porter was a friend of Miss Benning's. There was a card left at the bedside with Miss Benning, and it was from a Mr. Jerry's Porter.
Who knows that?
I'm sorry?
Does Mr. Devlin know that?
I wasn't gonna bring it up with Mr. Devlin, but
Who you wanted to bring it up with?
only in response to the state's ask.
But how would he know that?
I was going to show him the actual cards.
How was he gonna know where it was found and located?
I was gonna ask him to read the cards.
How was he gonna know where it was found and located?
I was going to tell him.
Okay.
And those cards that was left on the side of the bed listed a Jerry's Porter, and he referred to himself as her lover. And this was on March the 6th, the day of her death. And I thought that it would be in direct response to the state's solicitation of the relationship with Mr. Porter as only being friends.
All right, get those. You never asked the court to introduce, I don't know how many pages these are, 50 plus. You never asked the court anything about those texts. But we'll put them under seal for your proper.
And I specifically asked the court if I could introduce those text messages.
No, you didn't.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, who's the next witness?
At this time, Your Honor, the defense will call Dr. Jancy Lindsay.
Okay, let the jury step down. Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. The jury, let the record reflect all of your own are here present.
Steve, right here, this right.
Swear to tell the truth and help you God.
Yes, I do.
This way.
Good morning, Carolyn.
Sure.
Dr. Lindsay? Good morning, Dr. Lindsay.
Good morning.
Could you please state and spell your name for the record, please?
Dr. Jancy Chun Lindsay, JANCI-CHUNN-LINDSAY.
And how are you employed, Dr. Lindsay?
I have my own consulting toxicology and molecular biology business, Toxicology Support Services, LLC.
And how long have you owned your own business?
Since mid-2009.
And could you give the court information in regards to your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in biological and physical sciences. I have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry.
Okay. And could you tell the court exactly when and where did you start working as a toxicologist?
I started working in the laboratory formally as a toxicologist. Most of my research over the years, I worked in a lab before going back to get my PhD, in between my bachelor's degree and my PhD, as a lab technician at the bench. And I was able to do a lot of toxicology research and even publish as a technician, which was really great. It helped me get into graduate school. But I started doing toxicology research then, and then I was hired directly after my PhD into Exponent Scientific Consulting Group as a toxicologist in their Toxicology and Mechanistic Biology division.
Very good. And have you had the opportunity to be published or have any articles published?
I have.
And have you had the opportunity to testify prior to today and be deemed as an expert?
Yes, many times over the past 20 years.
Would that be civil and criminal or both?
Both, and then military case.
Very good. At this time, I would tender Dr. Lindsay as an expert and would offer her CV,
In the field of
toxicology.
any questions from the state? All right, again, ladies and gentlemen, this witness will be allowed to give her expert opinion. You can place such weight on it as you choose to. And that'll be 60. Okay.
Dr. Lindsay, have you had the opportunity in this particular case to review any materials as it relates to the case against Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I have.
Can you inform the jury exactly what all materials have you had the opportunity to review?
Yes, I have reviewed the toxicology litigation packets that everybody has been talking about, the detective investigations, the EMS report for Jade Benning, the bond hearing transcript, which had interviews with several of the people that are involved, transcripts from these hearings, all the literature that I brought on the toxicology of both cocaine and fentanyl and them together, the Pandora records, which are the administrative records for all of the medications which Jade received while she was in the hospital, the ME records for Miss Benning and the baby Abby's autopsy report in Jade's medical records.
Thank you. I want to now draw your attention to Toxicology Lab Report by ENS 23129285.
Yes.
You have that, and it's on the screen beside you as well.
Yes, I do have it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you remember specifically what was tested in this specific lab report?
Yes, this lab report covers the testing of Miss Benning's comforter, the blue comforter from the apartment.
And was there any type of bodily fluid that was found to be on the comforter?
So they had what they looked to be vomit in a section of the comforter that they extracted in order to test that section of the comforter for drugs. And then they chose another section of the comforter as a case blank, which did not appear to have any vomitus on that portion of the comforter.
And what is a case blank, Dr. Lindsay?
So there are several case blanks in these types of tests. They'll be just the homogenate buffer that they use to extract, and of course it should have nothing in it. And then they'll use an area of the comforter or clothing that they believe does not have any of the liquid item or blood or whatever the matrix is that they're testing, so that can be a blank for them as well. So they'll have just the buffer, and then they'll have what they think is a true blank on the material.
There's been a lot of talk about the word matrix. Will you tell the jury exactly what a matrix is?
So in this case, when we're talking about matrix, we're just talking about whether it's blood or urine or fabric or vomit. That's all it means. It's not meant to be a fancy word.
Now, this jury has heard a lot of science, and I'm sure they don't want to hear a whole lot more.
What is your question?
Could you tell us exactly what was found to be positive on this comforter from Ms. Benning's home?
Yes, I can. So on the comforter, we have the presence of fentanyl, we have the presence of cocaine, we have the presence of the primary metabolite of cocaine, benzoyl ligoxanine. They did not test for EME, but we do have cocoethylene as well, which is what forms when you use cocaine and ethanol at the same time.
Okay. And ethanol, would that be alcohol, like drinking alcohol?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Were there any other substances that were at some point found on this comforter but was later to be determined inconclusive?
Yes.
Do you know what those are?
I believe those were THC, methamphetamines, and I think it was just THC and methamphetamine.
Very good.
Yeah.
But to be fair, they later determined that the spikes, if you will, were not placed in that test, so they could not say affirmatively whether that was so. Is that right?
That's right, and they didn't rerun the test, which they could have done. And they also didn't report those values. Yeah.
Okay, and so to be clear, it wasn't that they weren't present, it's just that they did not run the confirmation to get a more definitive result.
Correct. This was the first time they were doing this assay, so they were coming up with a new technique. That's the best way to say it. So it hadn't been validated yet.
And what is an assay?
An assay is just a protocol for how you do something in the lab.
Okay. Now, were they able to quantify any of the substances?
Sorry. Goodness.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I'm making a mess up here. I apologize.
There are tissues on the side of it.
I got it. Sorry about that. Okay.
Were they able to quantify any of the substances that were found on the comforter?
Well, they purported to be able to quantify them, but not really, because there's no comparative. Since they were doing this for the first time, they had no comparative liquid. They added a buffer, but it's not like it was blood or urine, so they added a buffer to it. There's nothing to compare it to in the literature to give it a. So they came up with an amount, but there's no other something in the literature to say if you took this amount of drug and vomited this much on this comfort in this volume, you would have, of certain concentration. So that's why it's really more qualitative, what we call qualitative than quantitative, or semi-quant.
Did you still need the towel for you?
Yeah, let court officer clean that up for you.
Sorry, that's very disruptive. Apologize. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, in regards to the cocaine that was found, how does the cocaine relate to, I think, what you call BZE? Can you explain that to the jury?
Sure. So benzoyl ligoxanine, or BZE, sometimes called BE, is the major metabolite of cocaine. It's formed when cocaine passes through the liver, as is the next metabolite, EM, the irigoxine methyl ester.
And the BE and the cocaine, was that found in the vomits?
Yes, it was.
Now let's talk about the fentanyl. Where was the fentanyl found on the comforter?
So it was found in both the vomitus and in the case blank, which complicates things. Yeah.
Why does that complicate things?
Well, because the case blank was supposed to be a case blank. So finding fentanyl on the case blank indicates that there was the presence of fentanyl on the comforter, either from contamination or from prior use.
And did the lab expect to find fentanyl on the case blank?
No. No, it should not have had fentanyl.
What is the purpose of a case blank?
Well, to be a blank area of the substance you're testing, as we kind of went over a minute ago. Yeah.
Is that the purpose, to see whether or not the instrument is working properly and things of that nature?
Now that's another blank. So like I said, you'll have like a buffer blank, and then you'll have just another blank for the media that you're using, if that's possible in this type of a fabric test, or maybe you're testing an airbag or something else like that.
Did they rerun that fentanyl to ensure that there was nothing wrong with their instrument, and to ensure that the fentanyl that they found outside of the vomitus was in fact a true presence of fentanyl?
I don't remember if they reran that fentanyl, but I know that they validated that the fentanyl was there. Dr. Methune validated that the fentanyl was, or excuse me, Dr. Kolosky from CFSRE, I think, and Dr. Methune from NMS.
And is Dr. Methune the actual forensic toxicologist who in fact performed the testing on this particular comforter?
Yes.
Now I want to bring your attention to the cocaethylene.
Yes.
Where was the cocaethylene found?
So the cocoethylene was found in the vomitus, but not in the case blank.
Thank you. And again, no concentrations could be attributed to any of these substances as it relates to the comforter.
Well, comparatively, there's no ability to compare. So it's a semi-quant. They purported to have an amount, but what do you compare it to? That's kind of the problem.
And would that be consistent with Dr. Methune's testimony that you could not give a definitive quantitative value on any of these substances?
Yes.
I now want to draw your attention. Could you? Thank you. Do you see what's on the side of you there?
Yes.
And I believe that this would be State's Exhibit number 46, I believe. And could you tell us what exactly this is?
It looks like it's the chромatographs from the testing.
Okay. And what is a am I saying that?
The chromatograph?
Chromatographs, what is that?
It's the first part of the testing when you use a chromatography method. They'll say something like, we're going to test by GCMS, gas chromatography, mass spectrophotometry. If any of you remember chemistry back in school where you had to go through organic chemistry and identify the compounds, and you might have learned about chromatography and mass spectrophotometry. The mass spec looks at the ion, the chromatography looks at where that chemical elutes off of a column, and each chemical has its own kind of signature time where it elutes off of the column, and according to its abundance, it'll make what looks like a mountain peak, and you can measure the area under the curve and compare it to a standard curve to get an idea of the relative abundance of that particular sample.
Now, to be fair, did NMS find that the fentanyl was a number such that it was below the rate of where they would detect it, meaning below the reportable limit?
Below the limit of quantitation or below the limit of detection. Well, concentration, they've got it highlighted. Yes.
And what does that mean when it's below the level of detection?
Well, they won't report it often. So it's there, but it's not being reported.
And is that something that's pretty standard in all labs, that before they will actually report something,
Yes.
it has to be at a certain level?
Yes, I think people are probably most familiar with it in alcohol in hospital tests. If you don't have above 10 milligrams, which is about a half a drink for a 150-pound person per deciliter, then they won't report it. Even if you have alcohol in your system, they'll say it's just a negative test.
Very good. Josh, can you? I want to now bring your attention to work order 23126889. And it is also on the screen. Next.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what exactly is this particular toxicology report testing?
Yes, so this is the blood that was taken at the hospital at 10:31. Unfortunately, it was collected in the wrong type of tube in order to store the blood and the enclosed chemicals properly. Typically, in order to preserve cocaine, which is super susceptible to hydrolysis and degradation, we have to add some sodium fluoride and some other chemicals to keep it stable, or it'll just spontaneously degrade. But they used a clear plastic tube with no sodium fluoride or anything in the tube, which is problematic. And then there's the liver tissue from the baby and the homogenate of the liver tissue and buffer from the baby.
And this, you had stated that it was taken at 10:59. Would that be on February 25th of 2023?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't stipulate that.
Would this be at a time when Ms. Benning was actually in Vanderbilt Hospital?
Yes, when she first came to the hospital.
Did this particular test positive for any substances?
Yes, it did. Hang on, just let me get mine out because I can see it better. So it tested positive for the main metabolite of cocaine, benzoyl at 1,800 nanograms per mil, for cocaine at 78 nanograms per mil, and for agochnine methyl ester at 7,800 nanograms per mil, as well as for fluconazole in the baby's tissue, which is an antifungal, at microgram per gram. So it was just a presumptive positive, a qualitative, what we call a qual instead of a quantitative.
Okay. And do you see whether or not cocaethylene had an indication on this particular test?
So on this particular test, they don't report cocoethylene, but in 8, 9, no, they don't. They didn't report cocoethylene in this test.
And do you see whether or not a confirmation test was ran on cocaethylene on the last page of this particular report? It's also on your screen next to you, page 3 of 4.
Yes.
Why would a lab run a confirmation test on any substance?
Because they had detected it in the, okay, so these are the reporting limits that actually isn't being, the actual result. Those are the reporting limits.
But do you see that there was a confirmation test actually ran for cocaethylene?
So they would run a confirmation test if they saw that it was in the first portion of the test, which is usually an immunoassay screen.
And why do they run screens as opposed to just going straight to the confirmation?
Some labs do go straight to the confirmation through something called QTOF. Labs are moving towards that, but it's less expensive to do the ELISA.
And what reason then, if they found cocaethylene or had a detection, why wouldn't they report it?
It may have been below their reporting limit or their limit of quantitation if it's a quantitative test. So this particular test was a quantitative test. You see everything's reported in quantitative units in nanograms per mil, not just presumptive positive or positive, except for the fluconazole. So if it's below their limit of proper quantitation, that is, if it's off the curve, if it doesn't fit on their curve because it's too low, then they won't report it. Or if it's below their limit of detection for reasonable presence.
Thank you. I want to ask you now a few questions as it relates to the substance cocaethylene. Could you educate the jury what reasons would cocaethylene appear in any matrix?
So if cocoethylene is there, that indicates that a person has ingested ethanol and cocaine at the same time and it has gone through the liver. It has to go through the liver to make the cocoethylene. So this isn't something that would spontaneously form in the saliva or just in the blood. It has to go through first, what we call first pass metabolism.
And let me ask you this. Cocaethylene, I believe you testified before that it was when cocaine and ethanol come together at the exact same time. Is that right? Is there any other reason that that would appear?
No.
How long does it take? Well, let me ask you this. We don't see ethanol when you find cocaethylene. What does that mean if cocaethylene is the presence of cocaine and alcohol at the same time? How could you see cocaethylene but not see ethanol?
So the ethanol will bind the cocaine and make cocoethylene, and cocoethylene has a longer half-life than alcohol. So if the alcohol is above the level of the cocaine, then what's ever left over you might measure, but people have an average burn rate of 18 milligrams per deciliter per hour or 0.3 milligrams per minute of alcohol. So she could have, in a scenario, let's hypothesize a scenario, if she had drank even 4 drinks earlier that day, it would have been completely gone by the time she got to the hospital.
And so can you educate the jury, what is a half-life?
A half-life is the amount of time it takes for a particular chemical to be divided in half in the blood or the urine, depending on which half-life you're looking at, for half of it to dissipate and be gone.
Now, half-lives in terms of what that is for each particular substance, is it different for every substance?
Yes, it is.
Is this a standard accepted practice in toxicology?
Yes, it's at the top of most of the toxicology treatises, I guess you would say, in the Besselt's reference, which is kind of the Bible of toxicology and drugs. It's listed in the top left-hand corner in the literature that I've presented.
What is the half-life for cocaine?
So the half-life for cocaine is pretty short. It's cited as anywhere from 0.3 to an hour.
And I believe you testified that BZE is the first metabolite of cocaine, the parent cocaine?
That's correct, and it has a different half-life than cocaine.
What is the half-life for BZE?
I think it's 1 to 2 hours for BZE.
And does EME have a different half-life than the parent cocaine and BZE?
It does. I don't recall EME's half-life off the top of my head, but it is longer than cocaine, the parent compound, which is why you see the large amounts of metabolite with the smaller amounts of cocaine.
And EME would be the second metabolite that forms after BZE?
Well, they form, I have a chart, they form differently. So BZE and cocaine are not, or BZE and EME are not the only metabolites of cocaine. There are several other metabolites, but those are the main metabolites of cocaine that are formed and measured in the pharmacokinetic studies that we look at to try to get an idea of how much should be in the blood or urine after a person ingests a certain amount.
And what is the half-life of cocaethylene?
So cocaethylene has a longer half-life as well. It's cited as different, anywhere from like 1 to 4 hours, basically. Some say 1 to 2, some say 2 to 4.
Do you know what would be the difference as to why it would be 1 hour versus 4 hours?
So inter-individual metabolism, co-ingestants, if a person's taking a particular drug that can retard the pharmacokinetic profile for that particular drug, because drugs use similar enzymes. So for cocaine, the main enzyme is CYP3A4. And CYP3A4 is a universal enzyme that metabolizes a lot of drugs, including fentanyl.
And well, let me ask you this. What is pharmacokinetics? You just mentioned that. Could you educate the jury what that is?
So pharmacokinetics is, I guess, the study of the metabolism of a substance and the ability to look at it over time, its decay over time. You can measure the pharmacokinetics. If you give a person dose X of a drug and you know what their weight is and you can estimate their volume, their body volume of blood, then you can graph a curve for how long it should take for that particular drug using the known half-life in different compartmental models to be exited from the body. As long as you don't have some other drugs that are using the same enzyme that are interfering with that curve, which is unfortunately what we have here.
And would that be the equivalent that the jury could probably understand is if someone is pulled over for drinking while driving, and the police may want to try to figure out what was his blood alcohol level at a certain time, if they
Yes.
did get it particular. Is that the same as the extrapolation of alcohol to get that quantitative number?
Yes, there's pharmacokinetics for alcohol, and we just discussed them a little bit ago, that 18 milligrams per deciliter per hour burn rate, and I do that all the time.
Okay. And so were you able to guesstimate or try to determine, given the cocaethylene that was found in the vomitus of Ms. Benning, were you able to utilize pharmacokinetics to get an idea as to when you would have thought that Ms. Benning would have ingested cocaine and alcohol at the same time?
So, I guess first of all, It's an assumption to say it was an oral, she ingested something orally, right, beyond the alcohol. We don't know for sure with the cocaine, right? And second of all, we have to allow for the pass through the liver for it to show up in the blood. So, we would say in the past few hours.
You say the past few hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or can't you say?
Can't really say, no.
And is one of the reasons that you can't say is because there, in regards to the vomit, there aren't any numbers that can definitively be determined for that particular test.
Right, we don't have a matrix to compare it to, the blood, right, or the urine.
What about the blood that was found in 231268889? Are you able in any way to try to determine the pharmacokinetics in that regard?
So this is the tube that didn't have the preservative in it, the plastic sample, and we know that cocaine is very volatile. However, we don't know to the extent that it was volatilized, or hydrolyzed, excuse me, not volatilized. And what I mean by that is I think earlier Dr. Carney tried to infer that Miss Benning had a 78 cocaine level when she came to the hospital, and then they drew her blood, and then it all just spontaneously hydrolyzed to the tube. And I think that is very incorrect to say. One, it's not possible because cocaine is metabolized so fast. Some of it would have metabolized already by the time she got to the hospital, no matter when she took it, because that 0.3 to an hour. And two, because these numbers, if I just saw these numbers,
I don't mean to interrupt you. When you say these numbers, are you speaking of the BE at 1800, the cocaine at 78, and the EME at 7800?
Yes, the smaller amount of cocaine at 78, the BZE at 1800, and the large amount of EME. If I knew nothing about this case, I would think that this was a person who would use throughout the day and it stacked because of the large amount of metabolite. Now, what does that mean practically for us? And the tube that doesn't have the proper preservative in it, it means we don't know. We don't know what that number should have been. We don't know if it was higher in cocaine and it just hydrolyzed. Or we don't know if it indicates there was stacking or use going on during the day.
Okay. And why don't you
From
know?
a toxicology perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you know?
Because there wasn't any preservative in the tube. And so we don't know whether half of it hydrolyzed, all of it hydrolyzed, some of it hydrolyzed.
So are you stating then, Dr. Lindsay, that the pharmacokinetics as it relates to cocaine is determined once that cocaine is preserved properly, and that's when you get more definitive numbers?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And so when Dr. Kotulski stated also that he would not agree to add the EME and the parent cocaine to get a definitive number, you would agree with that?
Yes, but for a different reason. I wouldn't do that in a good cocaine sample.
Okay.
Because they have different molar ratios and different half-lives, so they won't be present in a one-to-one. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison. You might get a relative sort of abundance, or what's better to do is to compare it to what's in the literature when they give measured amounts of cocaine, and then they record what 10 people have in their urine or their blood 2 or 3 hours after they give the dose. And that, I feel like that is a better mechanism to try to get at that.
To that point, did you ever review other material and ascertain that 2 days later, Ms. Benning's blood tested positive for cocaine and had a measure of 69 nanograms per milliliters of cocaine?
Yes, I did, which would be pretty impossible by normal pharmacokinetics if the half-life was maintained as it would be with cocaine alone.
What do you mean by that?
She would have had to use an elephant's worth of cocaine at the high end and anywhere from like 6 to 14 8 balls at the low end.
4 to 16 8 balls. What is an 8?
16, yeah.
What is an 8 ball?
3.5 grams of cocaine. And that's the low end. So the pharmacokinetics don't make sense. So why? Why don't they make sense? So the co-ingestion, I'm going to get a little water and I'm not going to spill it this time. Promise. The co-ingestion of fentanyl or the co-use of fentanyl with cocaine, whether it's ingested or not, they both use the same enzyme, that's CYP3A4. They also both inhibit the clearance of each other. So fentanyl inhibits an enzyme that pumps cocaine out of cells. And fentanyl also causes dopamine to accumulate at the synapse, which is the main mechanism of action of cocaine. What does that mean? That means if you use them together, you don't have the same half-life. You have cocaine hanging around longer and you have fentanyl hanging around longer. And because of that, you increase the toxicity of the two drugs and you lower the threshold dose at which toxicity occurs. In short terms, using them together makes them much more toxic at a lower level.
And how then can you explain that if Ms. Benning was in the hospital on 2/25 at 22:31, which would have been on February 25th of 23, at 10:31 p.m., and stayed in the hospital until her next blood test draw on February 27th, how then did that nanograms per milliliters of cocaine only go down by 9 points?
So, one, it probably didn't just go down by 9 points. There probably was more cocaine initially. However, as I said, the cocaine pharmacokinetics don't work. She obviously didn't ingest or was exposed to an elephant's worth of cocaine, nor probably 16 8 balls. Cocaine has a very anesthetic effect, and they even use it in anesthesia for eye surgery and for nose surgery. So that much cocaine would have numbed her mouth completely, or her nose, or her face. It's just not probable. So what is probable is that the pharmacokinetics of using fentanyl and cocaine together retarded the clearance. How much? We don't know. So where normally with a single drug you might be able to do some pharmacokinetics to try to arrive at what the dose might have been in the beginning, you can't do that here.
So to have a number, for example, to utilize the number Dr. Carney opined on, of 7,878, can someone, in your opinion, slip that amount of cocaine in someone's drink without them noticing?
Objection, Your Honor. Just to
I'll
correct.
sustain the objection.
I'll ask you a hypothetical. I have to ask you a question. Let me give you a hypothetical. If someone was to slip an enormous amount of cocaine into someone else's drink, what, if any, symptoms would you expect that person to feel when levels are 7,878?
So I think people are getting the levels kind of mixed up.
She just asked you a question.
Okay, that level is actually within a normal medium to high use parameter for people that abuse the drug.
But would
That's
they,
not answering the question.
would they experience any symptoms?
Yes. So they would experience the normal symptoms from using cocaine.
And what type of symptoms symptoms would they experience with 7,878 nanograms per milliliters of cocaine?
Oh, if the level was that high, what a medium to high user would experience: tachycardia, agitation, higher heart rate, pulse, sometimes some thoughts of persecution, fuzzy halos around the eye, around bright lights, hyperthermia.
So, and I guess my question is, if they were to drink that amount, would that affect the numbness in their mouth?
That amount, perhaps not. It might make them a little bit numb. What would make them really numb is trying to do the pharmacokinetics back to an expected dose.
So,
from that 69, which is our most reliable sample.
okay, so the 69, was the amount in her blood on February 27th. If you were to use the pharmacokinetics to go back to February 25th, 23, what amount of cocaine would she have had to consume in order to be at 69 nanograms per milliliters on February 27th?
That's where we talked about the elephant and the multiple 8 balls, and I said that it was improbable. So in reality, we just don't know how much she consumed beyond that first blood measurement, which was in an improper tube. So it didn't give us an idea of when. It could have been earlier in that day. It could have been right before.
But will it be more than the amount that we see on these tests?
Oh yes, well, the 69 going backwards, yes, but the 78 is within normal limits of a high dose use, medium to high dose use.
And given those numbers that you stated would be very high doses, would you expect someone who was drinking that amount of high dose to experience numbness in their mouth?
Yes, they should.
I want to ask you a question in regards to liquid cocaine.
Okay.
Is liquid cocaine a thing? Is that a thing?
Not really, but people do dissolve cocaine in liquids.
And to dissolve cocaine in a liquid, along with alcohol, how much cocaine would someone have to dissolve in a liquid to end up at the numbers we see on these tests?
To end up at the numbers that you see on the test,
Yes.
not that much. What a medium to high dose user would use. The problem is that the test is not reliable to tell us when it was used. That's really the problem.
And I'm not speaking of the numbers on the test. I'm talking about going back to 225 in order to end up on 227 at these numbers.
Oh, that's super high dose. That's improbable. That's how we know the pharmacokinetics are off. You can't use the singular compartmentalized.
In your opinion, do you believe that to use the pharmacokinetics to go back, because we know the half-life is 0.7 to 1 hour. And
3 to 1 hour.
0.3 to 1 hour.
It's
And
different
so
in different places. Yeah.
that means, let's just use an hour for example. For every hour, you would have to go back, cut that number in half. Is that right?
Increase that number, yes.
Sorry, going backwards, increase
Yeah.
that number. And so every hour, you would increase that number by half to go back.
Which is billions of milligrams, which is why you're in the ton range. So,
And that pharmacokinetics is in fact the standard accepted manner in order to determine what that person's dose was at the time that we're trying to determine on 225, on the evening of 225, that is an accepted practice in your field of toxicology?
Yes, if you can get it to a single drug where it's acceptable. Yes.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Sure.
Dr. Lindsay, so you claim that you've reviewed several things in this case file, correct?
No, I reviewed several things in the case file.
That's what I just said.
I think you said I claimed to
You
review.
claim to, I'm saying, you said that you reviewed the toxicology reports, the detective investigation, you said
Yes.
the EMS,
That's
the
correct.
reports.
Yes.
Have you been watching all the testimony this week?
I've been watching most of the testimony. I tried to watch most of it. Yes.
Okay. And you reviewed the bond hearing transcript, correct?
That's correct.
And the Pandora records and the medical examiner records, correct?
That's correct.
And so you heard Dr. Carney's testimony before this jury, is that right?
That's correct.
And you heard Dr. Kovalewski's testimony before this jury, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you also heard Dr. Mithen's testimony before this jury, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so you were talking about the methamphetamine and the marijuana that came up in the assay test on the comforter. That's what you started out talking about. Do you remember that?
I remember it was mentioned, but that wasn't. That was one of the side tests that were done, or one of the results that came up, but it wasn't validated.
Correct. It wasn't validated because they can have false positives, correct?
I believe it wasn't valid. Well, yes, because of the iron ratios, they weren't correct.
And that's what Dr. Mithen testified to, is that it could be a false positive. It did not mean anything. She just noted it, correct?
That's correct.
And you would not report out something that is that low level, correct?
So there was a difference between the ion ratios being off and it being a low level. I don't believe she said that they didn't report it because of the low level. I can go back and check the testimony, or you can put it
It
up.
was the ion ratios were off. It was something that she couldn't report, correct?
Right, and they didn't run it again to see, because I think they were concentrating on the cocaine and the fentanyl. So, yeah, they only ran it that one time.
You would agree that Ms. Benning had multiple tests run and none of them tested positive for methamphetamine, correct?
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay, and none of them tested positive for marijuana either, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and also when she got to the hospital, she did not have alcohol in her system. That came back negative, correct?
No, you can't say that because the reporting threshold is 10 nanograms per mil. So as I discussed earlier, anything below that 10 nanograms per mil will be reported as a negative.
Okay, but
So we can only say that it was reported as a negative, that it was either negative or less than 10 nanograms per mil.
okay, so if the cocaine was dissolved in a very small amount of alcohol and put in her drink and she ingested it that way,
Yes,
that would explain the cocoethylene that is apparently so incredibly important.
it would have to be a larger amount of ethanol, not just a little bit, in order to come up in the assays. So we're not talking like a teaspoon. I think somebody had said something crazy like vanilla before.
Well, you just said somebody said something crazy. That's interesting because you're saying that it came up in the comforter, the cocoethylene, correct?
In the vomitus, yes.
Okay, but Dr. Mithen's report specifically does not even have a numeric value. The response was so low.
Yet it's still persisting in other matrices a couple days later, so it just hadn't formed all the way probably.
It literally does not have a numeric value. That is how low it is.
Okay, but it's still persisting in other matrices days later, so we know that it was at a higher value then, even given its half-life.
Days later, when she's in the hospital receiving medication after medication after medication, trying to keep her alive on life support because she ingested liquid cocaine. Correct?
You don't know that.
Dr. Lindsay, you have heard
Excuse
three
me.
experts
You don't need to raise your voice.
testify.
Your
Okay,
Honor, I
have a
have-
seat,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, just ask your question in a reasonable manner.
Dr. Lindsay, you have heard three experts testify that it was ingested and it had to be a liquid. It was in her drink.
Are you testifying? Because there's
Ma'am,
nothing.
Please don't interject yourself. Just keep yourself calm as well. You don't ask questions, okay?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
There is nothing.
Now, what is your question? You said three experts said X. What is your question?
You've heard the three experts testify that it was ingested orally, correct?
I've heard them testify that it could have been ingested orally.
Have you heard them testify that there was no evidence that it was ingested in any other manner?
No, I haven't.
You haven't heard that testimony?
I have not. If you point it out, I would be happy to look at it.
Okay, so you didn't hear Dr. Carney's testimony when she described her autopsy.
That wouldn't show you whether it was ingested orally or by any other manner.
Okay, and Dr. Lindsay, you went on and on about pharmacokinetics and calculating a dose. Did you provide your calculations?
Did I provide my calculations? No, but anybody can do them. If it's a half-life of 30 half-lives in between the first and the second dose, you would be up to billions of milligrams.
Okay, so you don't have any math that supports that at all for pharmacokinetics?
I did it at one time, but it was so off the chart, I knew that it was incorrect.
Oh, so you knew that you were incorrect?
No, I knew that the pharmacokinetics did not make sense.
Well,
So
did
anybody
it-
can take, the other experts didn't do the same calculations, and they could have, or they should have. They would have seen right away that it was not possible.
Well, you're saying it's not possible because you're refusing to acknowledge that it was ingested in liquid form, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm saying we don't know. It could have been ingested in liquid form, or it could have been used in another form. We just don't know.
Well, that's what you're saying, that you just don't know. But Dr. Carney was very positive when she did her autopsy report.
That-
So,
Wouldn't have shown, an autopsy report would not show whether someone had ingested it orally or ingested it through insufflation or injection. An autopsy would not show that.
Dr. Lindsay, are you a forensic pathologist?
No, I'm not a forensic pathologist, but I'm a toxicologist, and it would not show that. If you want to describe how it would show that, maybe that could enlighten me.
Dr. Lindsay, I am asking you the questions.
Okay, and I'm
Have you
correcting
ever
you.
performed an autopsy?
No,
Yes or no?
no.
Okay. Did you hear Dr. Krolewski's testimony where he said that he would not even attempt to calculate using pharmacokinetics to try to calculate the dose?
He doesn't do that regularly in his practice. He's more of an analytical chemist. It was clear by the way he answered the questions, and that's why he wouldn't do the pharmacokinetic calculations. That's more of a biochemistry type thing.
Dr. Lindsay, that was not Dr. Krolewski's answer. You do know that, correct?
I listened to his testimony, and that's how I knew he didn't do that. He didn't do it on a regular basis. He's more of an analytical chemist toxicologist than a strict toxicologist who does pharmacokinetic modeling. I think he was open about that.
Okay. Dr. Lindsay, I know that you do, so you're saying that you reviewed everything in the investigation file and the testimony at the bond hearing, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But you are here testifying that you think it's possible that Jade Benning was drinking 4 drinks out and doing cocaine. How was she doing it again?
We don't know.
Okay, but what did you use for your pharmacokinetics calculation?
So that's a little bit different. What I'm saying is we don't know whether she ingested it orally or whether through insufflation or whether injection. We just don't know because the numbers don't tell us. And the only reliable numbers we have are from a tube that did not have preservative in it. So while a ratio in a proper tube might give us an idea of whether it was orally ingested in case it, instead of insufflated, we didn't have that because we have the tube that didn't have the proper preservative in it.
Okay, so my question is, for the pharmacokinetics that you testified about, I think at one point you said 16 8 balls. What was the ingestion method that you used for that pharmacokinetics calculation?
So I did assume an oral bioavailability for that. Oh, gosh, should have been using that before.
So you assumed liquid cocaine.
Cocaine taken orally.
Dissolved in a liquid.
It doesn't have to be dissolved in a liquid. It's the same thing if you take it orally or food, liquid, whatever. It's going through the metabolism that way instead of going through insufflation or vaginal insertion or whatever.
So you said that, and then immediately afterwards you said, but you can't calculate the pharmacokinetics with this case.
Correct.
So you calculated it, and then you said you cannot calculate it in this case.
Yeah, so the history is that when I tried to apply proper pharmacokinetics to this case, it didn't work. And so then I went into researching, because it wasn't plausible, then I went into researching, well, why could that be? And then there are a couple articles that I provided the literature here. The best one is Chang et al., who goes into the pharmacokinetics of cocaine and fentanyl taken together and how they both inhibit each other's clearance. What does that mean practically? They both inhibit each other's half-life or clearance. So we don't know how much.
Dr. Lindsay, you're going on and on about cocaine and fentanyl. Those aren't the facts of this case. Dr. Lindsay, you do agree that on the internet there is information about liquid cocaine. Do you agree with that?
Yes, can we clear up the last statement?
Do you want to start arguing with her?
No, she just made a factually
Okay,
incorrect
if your lawyer,
statement.
they want to ask you, they'll ask you. Go ahead.
Okay.
What is your literature about liquid cocaine?
It's on the internet, correct? There's rehab facilities that have internet pages. When you go to it, it says do not ingest it this way because it is lethal and it will kill you. You have seen that, correct?
Yes, if you orally use cocaine, you can overdo the amount because the bioavailability is less and it takes longer to absorb.
And it is known to cause death. It is lethal, correct?
No, lots of people use cocaine that way. I mean, it's not preferable. You kind of waste part of the drug, but apparently the high is supposed to be better. The problem is the fentanyl along with the cocaine, which lowers the threshold dose of toxicity.
Okay, so if a website says that it increases the risk of sudden death, you're just saying not really, even though.
I'm saying it doesn't cause death in all cases.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
But it can cause death, and there is information on the internet that warns people about that. Don't you agree?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll overrule the objection. She's gonna answer, I think.
Yes, of course it can cause death. It depends on the amount.
And you would agree too that there is a lot of information on the internet about cocaine and that it can cause a placental abruption or a spontaneous abortion if used when pregnant, correct?
Cocaine can cause myocardial infarctions, including things like placental abruptions. Yes, it can.
I mean, this is the U.S. Department of Justice, 1988, cocaine use in pregnancy can lead to spontaneous abortion of the fetus.
Yes, it can also lead to birth of those babies, which everybody knows about, the crack babies, the cocaine babies that are adopted, thankfully.
Thank you, Dr. Lindsay.
Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have that come on, please?
Pardon?
I was asking him if I could utilize the here.
It's up.
Thank you. Dr. Lindsay,
Yes.
I want to draw your attention. First, let me do this. Draw your attention to the NMS litigation packet and from data in regards to, oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. In regards to 23129285. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you see the window for coca-ethylene?
I do.
And just to be clear, 23129285, is that the comforter we've been discussing this morning?
Yes.
And do you see a peak in a presence for coca-ethylene?
Yes, this was also admitted to by Mithun and Katalski.
If you'll just answer the question as it's given.
Sorry.
Instead of ad-libbing all of the information. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so does that in fact show that there was in fact the presence of coca-ethylene on the comforter in the vomitus?
Yes.
Now, to be fair, it was not up to the reportable limit, but it was in fact there.
Yes.
Are there reasons why a substance will not be at a reportable limit?
If it's not formed yet, if it's below the reportable limit.
And would this be before Ms. Benning ever made it to Vanderbilt Hospital?
Yes.
I now want to show you again NMS Laboratory Report 231-29285. Do you see that?
Yes.
That is the same number associated with the comforter. Is that right?
That's right.
And do you see the fentanyl peak in this window here?
Yes.
And is that peak a representative of, in fact, fentanyl being present in the vomitus on the comforter?
Dr. Mithun testified that it was, yes.
So it's not just you stating that the fentanyl was present and or the coca-ethylene was present. This is NMS lab data that was performed by Dr. Mithun.
Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Okay.
Dr. Lindsay, is there any type of treatment at a hospital that will cause you to test positive for cocaethylene?
No,
Thank you.
not that I know of. I would
Thank
say.
you. I'll pass it, please.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You can take
Thank
it.
you, Your Honor.
Step down.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense will call Dr. Kelly Larkin.
Okay.
May we approach briefly? She's coming in.
Did the state get what you wanted?
Yes, Your Honor. Maybe we have a few minutes to review this. Having now just been handed.
Something different?
Yes. Which might result in a jury out.
You'll step down the hallway, ladies and gentlemen.
This is my first time, so I'd like to take a minute. This just appears to be notes that she took. The first page are notes that come from the testimony, 911 call that Mr. Taylor made. There is testimony notes from Najee Jackson. She has names here of the EMTs. She has some medication notes from the medical records.
And all of this just was generated overnight.
And it's not original thoughts, it's just notes that she took from the records that.
All of that was generated overnight?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
What does that mean?
I'm assuming she took notes in regards to when she and I met and we went over what she would testify about today.
How long does the state need?
Would you like to see the notes, Your Honor?
I don't know. How long does the state need?
We have just maybe 3 or 4 more minutes, and maybe in that time can get Dr. Carney
Okay.
connected up.
How long is it gonna take to get Dr. Carney a link?
We just sent it to her.
Oh, okay. Somebody told me 20 minutes.
That's what, initially, Judge, they actually said 30 minutes. And then we cut it down a whole lot.
And just, I'm trying to see when, I don't know if it'll be this week or next week when we finish the proof, but you're planning on calling Mr. Taylor? Carl Taylor?
No, we've decided not to.
Oh, okay. So this would be the last witness?
It would be.
Oh. All right.
Court in the 10 minutes.